everyone, Erin here with Strength Through Self-Care, bringing you more tips and tools rooted in holistic self-care so we can better support ourselves and others during COVID-19. Today I want to talk a little bit about setting boundaries so we can bring positive energy into our daily lives and hopefully better manage the habits, activities, and relationships that deplete that energy or even actively bring negative energy into our lives. But first, what are boundaries? I like to think of boundaries as guidelines that we follow to fill our cup, or language and actions that define what we're okay with or what serves us, and what we're not okay with and what does not serve us in terms of how we interact with ourselves, others, and the world at large. Now, boundaries can be based on personal values, personality traits and preferences, and of course, even the larger social and cultural context that we live in. Today, as I talk about boundaries, I want to think of it in terms of three different types or three different realms. First, we have our personal habits. These are the day-to-day actions that we take as we interact with ourselves and our bodies. What we eat, how we move our bodies, how we worship, if we use substances, sleep hygiene, how we cope with stress, etc. Next, we have our interpersonal relationships, and this tends to be what people think of when they hear the word boundaries to begin with. This refers to our needs, the love language we speak, physical intimacy, how and how often we communicate and gather with loved ones, and even material and gift-related expectations and how we spend our money with or on other people. And the third realm that I want to consider is societal, or the world at large. This includes things like our news consumption, our engagement with social media and technology, which is particularly relevant right now during COVID, and also how much and what type of time or energy we commit when we're involved with larger organizations and initiatives. So we're going to take a look at all three of these areas today when we reflect on our own boundaries. So if we're talking about setting boundaries, the first step we need to take is knowing what on earth our boundaries are. And this can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge for folks. So I want to give a couple tips and a couple strategies. The first one is curious and compassionate self-reflection on paper. If you're someone who loves making pro and con lists, this is going to work really well for you. I tend to have people make a list of what they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with, or again, what serves them and what doesn't serve them for a particular situation or relationship. Now again, this could be related to any of the realms. So we might be looking at something like sleep hygiene and allowing ourselves, for example, to stay up a little bit later on the weekends while maybe maintaining more of a schedule on work days because we know that that serves us best. We might also be able to use this for interpersonal relationships. Maybe we make a dating or relationship bill of rights, so to speak, for ourselves of how we are okay with or what we are okay with regards to different types of intimacy, what's okay with us in terms of how we spend time with loved ones or how we talk verbally with our loved ones as well. So this is a great way to kind of get our thoughts down on paper and keep them organized. If you're someone who likes colorful visual aids, you can do something similar, but use green, yellow, and red zones as a way to kind of make sense of these ideas. So you might draw a bunch of circles on a piece of paper and write in different actions or different boundaries. And then what you'll do is you'll go and color code them. So you might color some of them green, and green zone would represent things that you're absolutely cool with. This serves me, this makes me feel good, makes me feel comfortable. Yellow zone might be some things that I'm okay with in certain situations or certain circumstances, but I want to revisit this, I want to reflect on it more. And then the red zone is really important. This is the no-go section, the things that no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm not comfortable with this. This does not serve me. This depletes my energy or brings me negative energy. So that can be a really fun visual aid sometimes for people. If you're someone who really enjoys art and drawing, you can actually draw a cup or even a garden or some flowers or trees and reflect on what fills your cup and what allows your garden to grow and flourish. And then on the flip side, what prevents these processes from happening? What slows them down? Or what prevents nourishment from coming to us and from allowing us to absorb this nourishment and grow? So those are kind of some fun ways to do a little self-reflection. If you're lost right now and thinking, what on earth is Erin talking about? I don't want to make lists. I don't want to draw. I don't even know where to start with this boundary thing. What I would say to you is listen to your feelings and your body cues and even your thoughts when particular experiences happen, and start to reflect on what they might mean. So this can be something in the moment or even after a moment as you look back and reflect. To give you a couple examples, if you had an interaction with somebody, maybe you did something that you didn't feel super comfortable with, but you felt a little bit pressured by that other person, and then you experience anger. You want to listen to that anger. All right, we talked a lot in the first video, taking a deep breath, on listening to our body, and even in my second video as well, on balance between flexibility and structure. We have to be attuned to our bodies and our feelings and listen to what they're trying to tell us in the way of messages. So if I'm experiencing anger, that might mean that one of my boundaries was violated and that I did something I was not comfortable with. We might also feel hurt. And if we look a little bit deeper into that, we might realize that maybe someone spoke to us in a way that did not feel good and that we're not okay with. This can also be really relevant for physical sensations we have. Maybe we engage in a particular type of exercise because we feel like we should, but we always have aches and pains related to it that are very unpleasant. That might be telling us that maybe that specific type of exercise is not serving our body, or maybe we're overdoing it a little bit too much. So we listen to our thoughts, our feelings, and our physical cues, and then we start to make more sense of what these boundaries might be. Now, once we've come up with some of our boundaries, next step is to figure out how we can really live in alignment with them. So I'm going to run through some ideas for each of those three realms we talked about: personal, interpersonal, and societal. Again, it would be beyond the scope of this video to go over all the different types of boundaries that exist, especially because they are so personalized and so tailored to each of us. So I'm really just hoping to give us some ideas and some food for thought that we can reflect on, as well as some activities to help us better dive deep into reflection with our own boundaries. So let's start maybe with personal boundaries or personal related habits. So this could be things such as setting intentions, setting particular goals, doing some self-monitoring and tracking, which can be particularly helpful if maybe we're having a medical concern or a mental health concern. It allows us to look for patterns and themes. Maybe we want to seek out professional help, whether it's seeing a counselor or seeing a physician, seeing a nutrition specialist, seeing an acupuncturist. And then we can come with some ideas of what's been working or what hasn't been working for us. We might set aside specific time during the day to do practices like journaling or meditation. We might have specific sleep hygiene routines that we try to change or try to adopt. But an important thing to remember is intentions typically precede goals. And when we are talking about goal setting, we want to focus on small, manageable action steps, small baby steps or objectives that will help us be able to work toward those larger goals that we have. So just to take an example, let's look at sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is strategies that we can do to sleep better. So we're talking about quality of sleep and sometimes quantity of sleep too. Let's say you're someone who is not sleeping well and you want to make some changes. There are a lot of changes you might be able to make. You might be able to change your pillow or mattress if you're financially able to do so. You might adjust things in your environment like the lighting or the temperature. You might reduce screen time before bed. You might even cut back on caffeinated drinks or drink chamomile tea. Right? These are just to name a few ideas. If you try to do all of those at once, I imagine it's going to be very overwhelming. It's not going to feel too manageable. So one thing that we would do is maybe select just one of those ideas and try to implement that and see how it goes. So remember, baby steps are still steps. Now let's look at interpersonal relationships. When it comes to living in alignment with our interpersonal boundaries, one thing that really helps is using assertive communication. Usually I encourage folks to think about using I-based language, also known as I statements or I messages, as well as boundary statements to clearly and effectively share with a partner, family member, or friend what your need is and what your concern is. So when we're talking about I statements, we typically start out with the words I feel, and then fill in the blank with whatever emotion you're experiencing. Then we follow it up with when, fill in the blank with whatever the situation was or action was. And then sometimes we have a third part to that sentence that is because. And that really makes the connection for folks as to why that situation made me feel that way. Remember, your loved ones might know you so well, but they're still not mind readers. So sometimes we really have to spell it out for people why we felt hurt, why we felt frustrated, or why we feel sad. Then we might follow up our I statement with a boundary statement, which is just a statement where we respectfully but assertively state what we might need next in terms of an action step. Now, sometimes people might feel the need to involve counseling or facilitation in these processes, which is totally legitimate and valid. And of course, sometimes we might realize even after using these strategies that there has been significant trauma in the relationship and it's not healthy or maybe not safe to be in that relationship anymore, especially if we're talking about an intimate relationship or romantic partner. So remember that it's okay sometimes to actually step away from a relationship or put some space there. And third, final, certainly not the least important, but the last one I'm going to talk about today is societal, the world at large. So this might mean saying no to certain commitments or certain requests, especially if you volunteer or participate in some type of organization or some type of initiative. It might also mean unplugging, stepping back from social media or from news consumption. Now, this is easier said than done, especially during COVID and during quarantine, where we're very dependent on technology in order to stay in touch with family and friends. And then, of course, many of us who are students or employees might need to use technology to do meetings, class sessions, and work that we have, and just to be connected with the larger world. There's nothing wrong with that. I talked in one of my most recent videos about connecting during quarantine and the fact that technology allows us to do that, and that's great. But sometimes we might realize that it's draining on us from a physical standpoint and also from a mental and psychological standpoint. For example, I choose to unplug around 8:30 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, about 2 hours before I go to bed. And it's hard, and sometimes I don't always end up doing it, but I try my best to put my phone in a different room and to not look at social media or the news or even really look at texts or calls during that time, just to give my mind and my eyes a break. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I encourage you to try some of the self-reflection activities as well as just listening to your body and your mind and your spirit so we can better understand what serves us and then live in alignment with those things. This is always important, but more than ever, we are living through a stressful and traumatic time where it's very important that we are taking care of ourselves in a holistic sense, and setting boundaries and priorities allows us to do that. So as always, I'm wishing you all wellness. Stay healthy, stay safe, and God willing, I'll see you next time.